We've all heard the stories about the criminals who strike fear into the hearts of even the toughest inmates and prison guards, but what if you could see them in action? In some of the most notorious prisons in the world, where the most dangerous criminals are locked up under constant surveillance, these men have earned their reputation, and these are some of the most feared men in prison caught on camera. Number 8. Michael Campbell. First up is Michael Eugene Campbell, a career criminal whose fearsome appearance has earned him the title of the world's scariest criminal. Known for his striking facial tattoos, including a pentagram on his forehead, Celtic knots on his cheeks, and a large pit bull design on his throat, Campbell's image alone is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. His body is covered in tattoos that speak to a violent and intimidating past, but it's his criminal history that truly makes him a figure of terror. Born on the 27th of August, 1975, Michael Campbell's criminal activities stretch back decades, with his first notable crime occurring in 1994. At the age of 19, Campbell attempted to rape a 14-year-old girl in Denver, Colorado. His early conviction for attempted first-degree sexual assault set the tone for his future interactions with the law, and his reputation for violence would only grow from there. Over the years, Campbell has accumulated a laundry list of charges, including assaults, property damage, and violations of protective orders. His notoriety as a sex offender, combined with his aggressive and unpredictable nature, made him a dangerous figure in multiple states. Campbell's most recent arrest occurred in 2019 Springfield, Missouri, after he was accused of attacking several neighbors with various weapons. The incident began when Campbell was reportedly throwing trash and other items onto the street, which led to a confrontation with a neighbor. Witnesses claimed Campbell used a shovel to strike one victim and at one point swung a pickaxe at another person. Campbell didn't stop there. He was seen with a machete and a pitchfork, threatening and attacking multiple individuals throughout the evening. The severity of the attacks led to multiple felony charges, including 3 counts of unlawful use of a weapon, 1 count of armed criminal action, and assault charges. Police were called to the scene twice that evening as Campbell continued his rampage. At one point, he was seen waving a metal bar and making threatening gestures toward another group of neighbors. In 2021, Campbell made headlines again when he was accused of attempting to rape a woman while she slept beside her boyfriend. Despite his violent past, Campbell remains defiant. At his most recent court appearance, he claimed that he was the victim in the case, asserting that the charges against him were unfounded. However, with a long history of violent offenses and a reputation that precedes him, it's clear that Campbell's true nature is far more dangerous than his menacing tattoos or threatening appearance suggest. As of now, Campbell remains in custody, facing several felony charges related to the Springfield attacks. Number 7. Nico Jenkins.
He don't get that power today, so no, I don't have anything to say to him.
Nico Allen Jenkins, born the 16th of September 1986 in Colorado, is an American spree killer who gained notoriety for his brutal crime spree in Omaha, Nebraska in 2013. Released from prison just weeks before the murders, Jenkins was convicted of 4 murders, along with a range of other charges, including robbery and assault. His violent crimes occurred shortly after his release on the 30th of July, 2013, following a 1.0 and a half-year sentence for carjacking and assault charges from his teenage years. Jenkins's violent tendencies were evident early in his life, including an incident at age 7 when he brought a loaded handgun to school. The first 2 murders took place on the 11th of August 2013, when Jenkins killed Juan Uribe Peña and Jorge C. Cajiga Ruiz. They were shot in the head with a .22 gauge shotgun after being lured to a meeting with 2 women. The victims' pockets were turned inside out, indicating a robbery motive. The killings seemed random, marking the start of a killing spree that would span just 10 days. Jenkins's third victim was Curtis Bradford, a former prison mate, shot in the back of the head after being lured to meet Jenkins and his sister Erica for a robbery. His murder was personal, believed to be partly motivated by a dispute between Jenkins and Bradford's associates. Andrea Kruger, a mother of 3, was Jenkins's final victim, shot multiple times in the face, neck, and back. On the 21st of August 2013, Jenkins stole her vehicle after the killing, and the car was later found abandoned with a failed attempt to set it on fire. Jenkins's actions were chilling, but the most disturbing element was his self-professed belief that he was acting under the command of Apophis, an ancient Egyptian serpent god. Jenkins claimed that the murders were sacrifices to this deity, a claim he repeated during his trial and in letters written to authorities. Jenkins's face was marked with scars from numerous self-mutilation attempts, which were often done with sharp objects, including razor blades. These mutilations were part of his troubling behavior, which also included frequent outbursts and erratic actions. During his trial, Jenkins's behavior was unpredictable. He would often laugh, howl, and speak in tongues as prosecutors presented the details of his victims' deaths. Despite his claims of being mentally ill, Jenkins was found competent to stand trial. He was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and was ruled to be faking psychotic symptoms. In 2017, he was sentenced to 4 consecutive death sentences, along with an additional 450 years for various weapons charges. Number 6. Thomas Edward Silverstein. Up next is Thomas Silverstein, one of the most feared inmates in the history of the U.S. federal prison system. Silverstein, originally sentenced for armed robbery, entered the system in 1975 at the age of 19. By the time he was 22, Silverstein had already committed his first murder inside a prison. His victim was a fellow inmate who had crossed the Aryan Brotherhood, the notorious white supremacist gang to which Silverstein belonged. After this murder, Silverstein was transferred to the Marion, Illinois, penitentiary, then considered one of the most brutal and secure prisons in the country. However, his violent tendencies only escalated from there. A year after his transfer, he was involved in another killing, this time a member of a rival black gang. Silverstein's ruthlessness had become well known, but it was his involvement in the death of Raymond Cadillac Smith that truly made him as one of the most dangerous figures in the system. Smith, the national leader of the DC Blacks, had made several attempts on Silverstein's life. Yet, when the opportunity came, Silverstein retaliated. Along with fellow inmate Clayton Fountain, Silverstein stabbed Smith 67 times and dragged his body around the prison for all to see. The display was a statement of dominance, one that sent shockwaves through the inmate population. By 1983, Silverstein's reputation as a cold-blooded killer was indisputable. After years of violent behavior, including multiple assaults on prison officers, he committed his most infamous crime. Silverstein killed Officer Merle Klutz, stabbing him 40 times in a brutal attack that was meticulously planned. Silverstein had spent months plotting this murder, driven by a deep-seated grudge against Klutz, whom he accused of harassment. This act of violence, carried out while Silverstein was being escorted by guards, led to a nationwide outcry and the eventual lockdown of the entire Marion facility. After the murder of Officer Klutz, Silverstein was placed in solitary confinement, where he would spend the next 36 years of his life. His conditions were harsh, kept in isolation 23 hours a day, under constant surveillance, and denied human contact. Despite this, Silverstein managed to maintain his influence, even from behind bars. His art, often depicting prison guards as pigs and reflecting his deep hatred for the system, became his only means of communication. Though he was denied the opportunity to sell his work, his reputation grew. He was a legend in the prison world, known as the man who would not be broken. Number 5. Rodney Alcala.
Back in 1978 is actually a serial killer.
I'm called the Banana.
Then we have Rodney James Alcala, better known as the dating game killer. Alcala, whose murderous spree spanned the 1970s, became infamous for both his crimes and his appearance on the popular game show The Dating Game in 1978, all while he was actively murdering women. Over the course of his life, Alcala was conclusively linked to at least 9 murders, though investigators believe the actual number of victims could be as high as 130. Born on the 23rd of August 1943, Alcala had a seemingly normal childhood, but his early life set the stage for his future crimes. He was a bright student, but also known for manipulative and violent behavior. After serving in the military, where he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, Alcala pursued education in the arts. He used his charm and skills in photography to lure young women, often convincing them he was a professional photographer. In 1968, Alcala's criminal behavior escalated when he abducted and assaulted 8-year-old Tali Shapiro. Though Shapiro survived, Alcala fled, leaving her in a coma. After fleeing California, Alcala assumed the alias John Berger and moved to New York, where he committed the murder of 3-year-old flight attendant Cornelia Crilly. His violent streak continued, and in 1971, he was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. After his arrest, Alcala was convicted of molestation and given a short sentence, but he was released in 1974. Just months after his release, Alcala was rearrested for assaulting a 13-year-old girl. In 1977, Alcala's reign of terror took a dark turn as he returned to Los Angeles, where he murdered multiple women, including Jill Barkham, Georgia Wickstead, and Charlotte Lamb. His method of killing was often brutal and sadistic. He would strangle his victims, sometimes reviving them to prolong their suffering before finally taking their lives. Alcala's ability to evade capture for so long was due, in part, to his ability to blend in and appear charming. He even competed on the dating game, where his unsettling demeanor was overlooked by the Bachelorette, Cheryl Bradshaw, who later refused to date him, describing him as creepy. By 1979, Alcala's killings had escalated further. He abducted and murdered 12-year-old Robin Christine Samso, whose case would lead to his eventual arrest. A police sketch of the man who had approached Samso's friends on the beach, asking to take their pictures, led to Alcala's capture. Once in custody, DNA evidence linked him to several other unsolved murders. He was convicted in 1980 for Samso's murder and sentenced to death, but his conviction was overturned in 1984 due to legal errors. He was retried in 1986 and again sentenced to death. In 2003, new DNA evidence linked him to 4 additional murders, and in 2010, he was convicted again for those crimes. Despite his notoriety, Alcala continued to deny his guilt, even publishing a book where he claimed innocence. Over the years, more of his victims were identified through the release of photographs he had taken of them, many of which were sexually explicit. Alcala's ability to deceive and manipulate those around him, combined with his photographic skills, allowed him to lure victims into his world of horror. His photos, more than 1,000 inches total, served as chilling evidence of his twisted obsession. Rodney Alcala died in 2021 at the age of 77, while still awaiting execution on California's death row. Number 4. Charles Bronson. Then we have Charles Bronson, one of Britain's most infamous and violent prisoners. Born Michael Gordon Peterson on the 6th of December 1952 in Luton, England, he quickly gained notoriety for his violent actions, which escalated his criminal record into one of the most terrifying in British prison history. Bronson was first arrested in 1974 for armed robbery, leading to a 7-year prison sentence. However, it didn't take long before he began earning a reputation for his brutality, often clashing with prison staff. By the time of his first release in 1987, his behavior had become so notorious that his promoter, advising him to pursue a career in bare-knuckle boxing, suggested he adopt the name Charles Bronson after the American actor. His violence became legendary, earning him multiple transfers to high-security facilities. But it wasn't just his aggression that made him feared, it was his unpredictability. One moment, he was violently attacking guards or fellow inmates. The next, he could appear oddly conciliatory or even apologetic, further complicating the efforts to manage him. Bronson's outbursts were constant and explosive. He would often take hostages, sometimes leading to lengthy standoffs, and cause extensive damage to prison property. In 1975, at Wakefield Prison, he was involved in a vicious altercation with another inmate, stabbing him with a glass jug. The same year, he went on to attack several prison officers and received additional time in solitary confinement. His actions didn't end there. Bronson became notorious for taking several prison officers hostage, most notably in 1987, when he seized a number of guards during a violent incident at Wandsworth Prison. During this time, he became infamous for his physical strength, reportedly capable of feats like performing 172 press-ups in 60 seconds and taking on multiple men in bare-knuckle fights. His time in solitary confinement, meant to be a form of punishment, only made him more dangerous. His time in isolation fed into his anger, and he used it to hone his physical strength, running extensive self-made fitness routines. In 1988, while in Wandsworth, he famously attacked a fellow inmate with a jam jar, causing serious injury. In 1994, he took a prison teacher, Phil Danielson, hostage for 44 hours, during which he destroyed the prison's interior. His many rooftop protests, during which he would tear off tiles and demand attention, became infamous. At Broadmoor, he was involved in violent encounters with other patients, even attempting to strangle a fellow inmate. In 2014, after decades of violence and disruption, Bronson changed his name to Charles Salvador, in homage to the surrealist artist Salvador Dali. But what makes him truly scary is the way he insists on his innocence, claiming that he acknowledges his previous actions but insists that he is now a different person, focused and settled. He feels that for the first time, he can truly sense freedom on the horizon. Number 3. Richard Lee McNair.
There he is, we got an escapee.
Oh, shit. Where from?
Prison.
And how can we forget Richard Lee McNair, who was dangerous not because of his crimes, but because of how difficult it was to keep him behind bars. McNair's criminal history began in 1987 when, just a month before his 30th birthday, he broke into a grain storage facility in Minot, North Dakota. That same year, he shot 2 men during a separate theft, with one of the men fatally wounded. While being questioned by police, McNair used a tube of lip balm to slip his hands out of his cuffs and fled the station. He evaded capture by hiding inside a building and jumping out of a window, injuring himself when a branch snapped under his weight. After being moved to Ward County Jail in Minot, McNair continued to demonstrate his knack for escape. He broke through a wall in his cell, though officers discovered the breach before he could make another attempt. He was then transferred to the North Dakota State Penitentiary, where he escaped once again, this time crawling through a ventilation shaft with 2 other inmates. McNair spent the next 10 months on the run across the United States before being captured and labeled a high-risk inmate. McNair was moved from facility to facility, each time proving his ability to outsmart guards. He was sent to the Oak Park Heights prison and eventually to Florence High Security Prison in Minneapolis, then to a high-security facility in Denver, and later to a federal prison in Louisiana. It was here that McNair pulled off his most inventive escape. He hid inside a mailbag that was shrink-wrapped for shipment. Using a breathing tube, McNair managed to remain concealed while the bag was transported outside, ultimately escaping the prison. But McNair's ability to elude capture didn't end with that escape. Later that same day, a police officer saw him running near train tracks. McNair lied, telling the officer he was simply exercising, but the ruse didn't hold up. In 2007, after spending over a year on the run, McNair was spotted driving a stolen car in Canada. During a police stop, he managed to escape once again. During his time on the run, McNair forged fake IDs and even used technology to monitor the media's coverage of his crimes. McNair's final capture came after a van he had modified with homemade tinted windows raised suspicion. A police officer noted the unusual van and, after checking the plate number, a chase ensued. McNair eventually ran into a parking lot, but was stopped before he could flee again. McNair now resides in ADX Florence, a supermax prison designed to prevent any future escapes. He spends 23 hours a day in solitary confinement, with constant supervision, ensuring he cannot outwit the system a 4th time. Number 2. Dennis Rader.
You will find a homicide at 43 South Pershing.
And then we have Dennis Lynn Rader, the BTK killer. Rader, born the 9th of March 1945, is infamous for his role in the brutal murders of at least 10 victims between 1974 and 1991. His moniker, BTK, stands for Bind, Torture, Kill, for the methodical nature of his crimes. While his targets varied, with occasional men and children among the victims, Rader primarily focused on women, often attacking them in their homes. The most terrifying aspect of Rader's killings wasn't just the violence, but the control he maintained throughout. His victims were bound sometimes with objects from their homes and either suffocated with plastic bags or strangled with ligatures. He tortured, took mementos, and even photographed the bodies of his victims. He would later send taunting letters to the police, detailing his crimes and daring law enforcement to catch him. These letters revealed a twisted sense of satisfaction, as he referred to his murders as projects, and even named them with code names like Project Foxhunt and Project Cookie. What made Rader even scarier was his ability to blend into normal life. He was a member of the local church and served as its president. He was a father and a seemingly ordinary neighbor. No one suspected the man next door could be harboring such a dark and violent side. In fact, He often held jobs that ironically put him in close proximity to his victims, like working at ADT, a security company, where he installed alarm systems for homes he later targeted. His outwardly normal persona made it all the more unnerving when his true identity as the BTK killer was revealed. After a long period of silence, Rader resumed his killings in 2004, sending letters once again, giving clues that led to his capture. Ironically, it was his own use of technology, sending a floppy disk to the police, that led to his downfall. Investigators were able to trace the metadata back to Rader. Rader's arrest in February 2005 was the end of a 30-year nightmare for the residents of Wichita. Rader pled guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms in prison. He is currently serving his sentence at the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas, where he remains in solitary confinement for his protection. Number 1. John Wayne Gacy.
In the clown makeup, I regressed into childhood. It was fun being a clown because you could be yourself or just let yourself go and act a fool.
Last but not least, we have John Wayne Gacy. Born on the 17th of March 1942, an American serial killer and sex offender who committed some of the most heinous murders in U.S. history. He is known for the brutal killings of at least 33 young men and boys between 1972 and 1978, with his crimes taking place in the Norwood Park area of Chicago, Illinois. Gacy's moniker, the Killer Clown, was from his public persona as a performer at local events, where he would dress as the clown character Pogo the Clown. He buried 26 victims in the crawl space of his home, while others were discarded in the Des Plaines River. In 1960, at the age of 18, Gacy became involved in local politics and joined the Democratic Party, beginning his rise in social circles. His ambition led him to manage several KFC franchises, where he allegedly began to make sexual advances on his male employees. Gacy's criminal history began to surface in 1968, when he was convicted of sodomy for sexually assaulting a young boy. He served a brief 18-month sentence before being released in 1970, only to resume his predatory behavior. By the mid-1970s, Gacy had gained significant community standing, becoming involved in local parades and civic events, all while secretly engaging in his grisly activities. His second wife, Carol Hoff, would later claim that she had discovered disturbing evidence, such as gay pornography and wallets belonging to young men, but was too intimidated to confront Gacy. Their marriage ended in 1976, and Gacy would go on to live alone, which he claimed gave him greater freedom to pursue his sick desires. Gacy's murders escalated after his divorce, with his victims increasingly drawn from local youth, many of whom were either homeless, runaways, or had been lured by promises of work. The frequency of his killings peaked between 1976 and 1978, and Gacy's ability to evade detection was aided by his apparent respectability. He often offered alcohol or drugs to his victims before overpowering them, sometimes using the same tactics he had employed in his clown performances to gain their trust. The investigation into his crimes began after the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Piest in December 1978. On December 21, Gacy was arrested, and a subsequent search of his home revealed the horrifying extent of his crimes. The jury found Gacy guilty of all 33 murders after a brief deliberation. He was sentenced to death, and after 14 years on death row, he was executed by lethal injection on the 10th of May, 1994. But for the time he was alive, he was considered one of the most notorious